One book, one extraordinary life. 48 chapters of saints, science, and the search for God.
I'm Kai.
And I'm Maya.
And this is our take on Autobiography of a Yogi, chapter by chapter. Yogoda, yoga, equilibrium, the body as an electric battery that can be recharged with willpower alone. No weights, no apparatus, no dumbbells or mechanical exercises. Just a boy sitting cross-legged in perfect stillness, pulling cosmic energy down through his spine, directing life force through his nervous system. And the results are feats of strength that would make powerful adults weep with envy.
Chapter 27, Founding a Yoga School at Manchi. And this is the chapter where Yogananda stops being a seeker and becomes what he was always meant to be, a teacher, an organizer, a man who takes the unshakable truth he learned at his guru's feet and builds something tangible, something real, something that lasts. Not just meditation in a cave, not just personal enlightenment pursued in isolation, but an actual institution, a school, a mission that's going to outlive him and continue teaching for generations.
So the setup. Sri Yukteswar comes to Mukunda one day and asks him a question that lands like a stone in still water. Why are you averse to organizational work? And Mukunda, who has been training as a monastic, living for meditation and prayer, feels genuinely startled by it. His whole conviction at the time was that organizations were these hornets' nests of human dysfunction. Leadership means constant criticism. You build something and people tear it down. You try to help and people resent you. Endless, complicated human dynamics, politics, ego. He thought the spiritual path meant transcending all of that, rising above the mess, staying pure through separation.
So he tells the master honestly. He says, "Sir, it's a thankless task. No matter what the leader does or does not do, he is criticized." The master just looks at him, and then Sri Yukteswar asks something that changes everything. "Do you want the whole divine chana, the milk curd, for yourself alone?" That's his response. Not a lecture, a question, a mirror held up to Yogananda's own attachment.
And then the master explains. He says, could you or anyone else achieve God contact through yoga if a line of generous-hearted masters had not been willing to convey their knowledge to others? Think about that. All the teaching Yogananda received, all the grace that flowed from Sri Yukteswar, Lahiri Mahasaya, going back to Babaji himself. That lineage only exists because masters were willing to do organizational work. They were willing to deal with students, with ashrams, with complications, with criticism. They did it so the knowledge wouldn't die.
And the master adds, God is the honey, organizations are the hives. Both are necessary. Any form is useless, of course, without the spirit. But why should you not start busy hives full of the spiritual nectar? It's such a beautiful image, not either or, both and. You need the structure to hold the honey. You need the hives to keep the sweetness alive. The honey without a hive just spills out onto the ground. It spoils. It's lost. But the hive with no honey, that's just empty architecture. Both things are sacred. The transcendent truth and the imperfect vessels that carry it forward.
I mean, this is huge because Yogananda was genuinely conflicted. He'd been a monastic. He dedicated himself to solitary spiritual practice. And the master is telling him, your real dharma isn't separation from the world. Your real dharma is bringing the teaching into the world in an organized way, taking care of people, building institutions. That's the higher path for you.
And Yogananda writes that his heart changes in that moment. He says, an adamant resolution arose in my breast. I would share with my fellows so far as lay in my power the unshackled truths I had learned at my guru's feet. He commits completely. His prayer becomes, Lord, may thy love shine forever on the sanctuary of my devotion, and may I be able to awaken that love in other hearts.
So the school starts small, very small. 7 children at Dihika, a little village, Yogananda teaching them yoga, meditation, the basics of spiritual life. But then comes the real opportunity. The Maharaja of Kasim Bazar, this wealthy patron, offers his palace to Yogananda for the school. And in 1918, the Brahmacharya Vidyalaya, which means education according to the first ashram stage, moves to Ranchi, which is about 200 miles from Calcutta.
And Ranchi is ideal, one of the most healthful climates in India. Fruit orchards, 25 fertile acres, enough space to actually build something. Yogananda creates a program that's totally integrated. Grammar school, high school, agricultural training, industrial training, academic subjects, all of it. And then alongside that, yoga, concentration, meditation, and this new system he's discovered called Yogoda.
Yogoda. This is the thing that makes the Ranchi school special, because Yogananda has figured out something revolutionary. He realizes that man's body is like an electric battery. The battery can be depleted through exhaustion, through careless living, through wasting the life force, but it can also be consciously, deliberately, through willpower and the direction of life energy, not through exercise or apparatus or anything mechanical, just through training the mind and nervous system to move life force at will. He discovers in 1916 that this works, that you can teach a boy to consciously recharge his body from the unlimited supply of cosmic energy, that the life force centered in man's medulla oblongata can be directed to any part of the body instantly. So he teaches the Ranchi boys these Yogoda techniques: simple physical positions, concentration, meditation, the art of moving life force through the body at will, and the results are absolutely extraordinary. The boys develop this remarkable ability to shift life energy from one part of the body to another with instantaneous control. They can sit in difficult, painful body postures for hours in perfect poise and stillness without fatigue. They develop strength and endurance that normal, powerful adults couldn't equal. They perform feats that would require years of weight training or gymnastics, but these boys are doing it through pure willpower and understanding of energy. Okay, seriously, the boys at the school do feats of strength that are absolutely mind-bending. And one of them, Bishnu Charan Ghosh, Yogananda's youngest brother, becomes a leading physical culturist in Bengal. He and one of his students travel to Europe and America, giving exhibitions of strength and skill that absolutely amazed university faculty, including those at Columbia University in New York. The whole thing proves what Yogananda had figured out. You don't need mechanical training. You don't need dumbbells or weights or all the apparatus that the modern fitness world insists you need. You need to understand your own energy, master the will, know how to direct the cosmic force through your nervous system, and the body becomes extraordinary. It becomes capable of things that seem impossible.
But the school isn't just about proving physical feats. Yogananda is actually realizing the vision of the ancient rishis, the forest academies where youth learned both secular and sacred knowledge. He's creating an all-sided education: body, mind, heart, spirit, everything integrated. And the boys are responding. By the end of the first year, there are 2,000 applications for admission, but the school can only accommodate about 100 students.
Okay, hold on. 2,000 applications? That means Yogananda has created something that people actually want. Parents are seeing something here that they believe in. This isn't just spiritual idealism. It's working. The school is actually succeeding.
And then comes something profound. Yogananda's own father arrives at Ranchi, the man who years ago wanted Yogananda to take a railroad job, who couldn't understand his son's spiritual path, who probably wondered if his boy had wasted his life chasing mystical experiences. And when the father sees what Yogananda has built, sees the happy, eager youngsters running around, sees the fruit of the spiritual work made manifest and tangible, something in him opens.
And his father says something beautiful. He says, "Son, I am now reconciled to your choice in life. It gives me joy to see you amidst these happy, eager youngsters. You belong here rather than with the lifeless figures of railroad timetables." And then he looks at a group of about a dozen little ones tagging at Yogananda's heels and says with twinkling eyes, "I had only 8 children, but I can feel for you." It's this moment of genuine reconciliation. The father's doubt has dissolved. He can finally see that his son wasn't lost. He was exactly where he needed to be.
You know, that's one of the quiet triumphs of the story. Not just the creation of the school itself, but the healing of the family wound. The father who questioned now understands. That kind of recognition from a parent who doubted you, that's profound. Aha, the story arc comes full circle. Yogananda can finally say to his father, "Look, I wasn't lost. I was exactly where I needed to be."
Absolutely. So the school has students, it has buildings, it has a mission, but Yogananda's honest about what this means day to day. He says, "In the Vidyalaya, I had to play father, mother to the little children, and to cope with many organizational difficulties. It's not all transcendent moments. It's not all meditation under the trees while the cosmic light pours down. It's also the mundane complexity of running an actual institution, feeding students, managing teachers, managing the land, solving practical problems, dealing with personality conflicts, making sure there's enough money. It's the real work of keeping something alive and growing in the physical world."
But here's where it gets interesting. Yogananda says that he remembers Christ's words from the Gospel of Mark. "Verily I say unto you, there is no man that hath left house, or brethren, or sisters, or father, or mother, or wife, or children, or lands, for my sake and the Gospel's, but he shall receive an hundredfold now in this time." He's saying that when you surrender your personal life for service, you get back something infinitely larger. You get back the whole school, the whole network of students and devotees. Your family expands. Yeah, and that reframes the organizational work. It's not a burden you have to bear despite your spiritual practice. It becomes a continuation of it. You're taking care of not 8 children, but hundreds. You're serving not your own family, but the larger family of seekers. And then there's the story that I find absolutely heartbreaking and beautiful. Yogananda has a pet deer, a young fawn. The children love it, and Yogananda loves it so much he lets it sleep in his room. Every morning at dawn, the little creature would toddle over to his bed for a caress. It's this tender, ordinary moment in the midst of all the organizational work. That's so nice. Wait, where's this going? You said heartbreaking.
One day, Yogananda has to attend to business in town. He feeds the fawn earlier than usual, and he cautions the boys very carefully not to feed it again until he comes back. But one of them is disobedient and gives the baby deer a very large quantity of milk. When Yogananda returns, the news is terrible. The fawn is nearly dead, overfed and suffering, and Yogananda is devastated. He places the apparently lifeless pet on his lap. He prays intensely to God, piteous prayer to spirit's life. He's so focused on healing this little creature. And then hours later, something shifts. The little creature opens its eyes, stands up, and walks feebly around the room. The whole school shouts for joy. Even the medical crisis passes. Everyone thinks the fawn is saved. Everyone thinks this has a happy ending.
Okay, so the fawn is saved. That's wonderful. But you said heartbreaking?
That night, Yogananda stays up with the fawn, sitting with it, keeping vigil until 2 o'clock in the morning. And then exhaustion takes him, and he falls asleep. And in his dream, something profound happens. The deer appears to him, the soul of the deer, fully conscious, and it speaks to him directly. It says, "You are holding me back. Please let me go. Let me go." And Yogananda, in the dream, hears this plea clearly, and he answers, "All right, I release you." The moment he gives permission, the moment he speaks those words in the dream, he wakes up immediately, and he knows. He cries out to the children, "Boys, the deer is dying." The children rush to his side, confused, and when Yogananda reached the corner of the room where he'd placed the pet, the fawn makes one last effort to rise, staggered towards him, and drops at his feet, dead.
Wait, what? The deer appeared in his dream to ask for release. That's not coincidence. That's a soul in an animal body that had completed its time there and needed Yogananda's permission to leave. The soul was trapped by his attachment. His love was literally binding it.
Exactly. And Yogananda realizes something profound that night, something that haunts him and transforms him at the same time. He understands that he'd been holding the deer back through his deep attachment. The fawn's soul was ready to progress to a higher form of life, a higher incarnation. But because Yogananda loved it so much, his intense loving prayers were keeping it bound to the animal body. His willpower, which is so strong, was literally anchoring the soul in the animal form. The soul couldn't move on. It was trapped in the physical plane by his affection. And so the deer appeared in the dream to ask, to plead for release. And the moment Yogananda said yes, with full awareness and surrender, the soul was able to depart.
So the teaching is about non-attachment. Even when you love something deeply, even when you're caring for it with everything you have to know when to let it go. You have to love it as part of God, not as belonging to you.
And Yogananda writes something very moving about it. He says, "All sorrow left me. I realized anew that God wants his children to love everything as a part of him, and not to feel delusively that death ends all. The ignorant man sees only the unsurmountable wall of death, hiding, seemingly forever, his cherished friends. But the man of unattachment, he who loves others as expressions of the Lord, understands that at death, the dear ones have only returned for a breathing space of joy in him. The deer was never really separate from God. It just took a different form, and it returned to the infinite consciousness it came from."
Yeah, that's surrender without bitterness. You let the thing go, but you understand that nothing is really lost. It's all returning to what it came from.
So alongside all of this, Yogananda is running the school, teaching the boys, managing the land, playing father-mother to the children. And then comes a visitor, Swami Pranabananda. You remember him? The saint with 2 bodies? The one who appeared simultaneously in Benares and somewhere else? The yogi who transcended the normal laws of matter and presence?
Right, from earlier chapters, the guy who defied all the normal laws of matter and presence.
He comes to visit the Ranchi school, and Yogananda says that when the great master observed the outdoor classes, the young boys sang motionless for hours in yoga meditation under the trees, he was profoundly moved. And Pranabananda says something that shows how much he respects what Yogananda is doing. He says, "Joy comes to my heart to see that Lahiri Mahasaya's ideals for the proper training of youth are being carried on in this institution. My guru's blessings be on it."
So Pranabananda is seeing in the school a continuation of Lahiri Mahasaya's work, the lineage continuing. the teaching flowing forward through generations.
And then a young boy sitting near Pranabananda asks him a direct question. "Sir, shall I be a monk? Is my life only for God?" And Pranabananda smiles gently, but his eyes are piercing the future. And he says, "Child, when you grow up, there is a beautiful bride waiting for you." The boy eventually does marry, even though he'd planned to become a monk. Pranabananda saw his whole future path and gave him permission to be human. That's beautiful. But then you said Pranabananda dies during this visit? Not exactly during, but sometime after. And when it happens, it's extraordinary. Yogananda learns from a man named Sanandan, one of Pranabananda's close disciples, that the saint established a hermitage near Rishikesh. He was giving loving training to the disciples there. They were making rapid spiritual progress. And one day, Pranabananda decided to host a massive festival feast. He wanted to feed a huge crowd at Rishikesh, about 2,000 guests. When Sanandan asked why he wanted such a large number, Pranabananda said, "This is my last festival ceremony." Sanandan didn't understand the full implications at first. He thought maybe the saint was just being reflective about life.
But he did soon. The saint and his disciples prepared thousands of guests. Pranabananda gave an inspired sermon on the infinite. And at the end, before thousands watching, he turned to Sanandan and said something unforgettable. He said, "Sanandan, be prepared. I am going to kick the frame. Kick the frame." That's his way of saying, I am going to abandon the body. I am going to release myself from this physical form. And what happened? Sanandan cried out, "Master, don't do it. Please, please don't do it." The crowd was stunned, tongue-tied, but the saint just smiled at them. His gaze was fixed on eternity. And then, as he gave his blessing, his body began to dissolve. His face lit with divine glow. He fell into ecstasy. The disciples watched as he left the body consciously. He looked at the sea of faces before him, and then his consciousness withdrew from the physical plane. He'd left his mortal frame. Wow! So this is a saint at the absolute peak of his powers and realization. He's not dying from illness. He's not being taken by karma or circumstance. He's consciously choosing the moment of transition. He's literally kicking the frame aside like it was a worn-out shoe. Exactly. And Sanandan says that Pranabananda was reborn shortly after, in a new body, because even leaving the body consciously, he still had karma to work out in the physical plane. He'd return to continue serving. But the point is that this is the level of mastery we're talking about. Conscious departure, full control over life and death. So Yogananda is building this school, running it day to day, teaching boys to recharge their bodies through willpower, creating a curriculum that encompasses everything from agriculture to meditation. And around him, the greatest saints of the age are still alive, still actively teaching. Lahiri Mahasaya is gone, but Pranabananda is still moving through the world, still appearing in multiple places, still blessing disciples. The lineage is visible, the teaching is being transmitted actively, and Yogananda is part of that living chain. He's not inheriting a dead tradition. He's part of a lineage that's still breathing. Here's the thing. The Ranchi school grew from 7 children at Dahika into this institution that's still operating today. Departments of agriculture, academics, sports, a medical wing that treats 18,000 patients a year. Yogananda's vision didn't stay small. It expanded. It spread to other cities. Lakshmanpur, Midnapur, Puri. The Yogananda Satsanga movement became real and lasting. And none of it happens without Sri Yukteswar's challenge, without the guru asking, why are you averse to organizational work? Without the master pushing Yogananda towards his actual dharma. The seeking phase is over. The teaching phase has begun. And Yogananda is going to spend the rest of his life doing exactly what his guru told him to do. Building hives full of spiritual nectar, creating institutions, teaching others. The seeker becomes the teacher. The student becomes the master. The cycle continues. And in the next chapter, something is going to shift again. Yogananda is going to go home to Kashi, the sacred city. And there he's going to encounter a spiritual experience so profound, so real, that it's going to confirm everything he's believed. But it's not going to come in the form he expects. It's going to come through a stone image, a figure that comes alive. And his relationship with his guru is going to deepen in ways he never anticipated. Yogananda has learned how to build, how to organize, how to serve masses of students and manage complexity. He's transformed from a monk who wanted transcendence alone into a leader who understands that his transcendence is incomplete without bringing others along. But the guru still has more to teach him, still has ways of breaking him open, of going deeper. That's the beautiful arc of discipleship. The student doesn't get to graduate just because he's learned one big thing. The real teachings are always deeper, and they're always about love. See you next time.